somewhere between the deadlines and the distractions, between the noise of notifications and the ache of not enough. We were told a story that happiness is something we must chase, that it waits for us at the end of accomplishment, at the peak of success, at the edge of some future where everything finally makes sense. So we ran. We filled calendars and emptied ourselves. We set goals, read books, burned incense, whispered mantras, and still, late at night or early in the hush before dawn, there's a question that lingers. If I've done everything right, why do I still feel restless? Why does peace still feel like a place I've never quite reached? But maybe it's not because you're failing. Maybe it's not because you haven't done enough. Maybe it's because you've been running in the wrong direction, not outward, but away from the very thing you're seeking. In the quiet teachings of Buddhism, there is a radical possibility that happiness doesn't come from adding more, achieving more, becoming more. It comes from letting go, from pausing, from turning inward, and touching the stillness you forgot was always there. This isn't the stillness of escape. It's the stillness of presence, the kind that doesn't numb you but awakens you, the kind that doesn't solve life but lets you finally meet it as it is. In today's episode, we step out of the race. We'll explore what unfolds when you stop, not as a failure of will, but as an act of wisdom. We'll listen to the silence beneath the noise and rediscover a truth that's been waiting all along. Happiness doesn't arrive when everything is perfect. It arrives when you do. Welcome to Trandy Wisdom, where every story is profoundly true. 1. The illusion of pursuit. Why chasing happiness leaves us empty. The sky over the city turns a faded shade of blue as morning arrives. Streets groan awake, elevators blink, and footsteps echo across cold tile floors. Another day begins, and with it, another race. Somewhere among millions, a woman closes the door behind her with a coffee in hand and a question on her mind she's asked for years without speaking it aloud. Why does happiness always feel one step ahead? She is not alone in that silent chase. Across continents and cultures, humanity moves with a shared urgency to reach something better, a better job, a better relationship, a better version of oneself. Like birds pulled by a magnetic field, we migrate instinctively toward an ideal we've been promised, happiness. But what if the pursuit itself is the very thing keeping us from arriving? This is the paradox at the heart of our modern dilemma. And it is not new. More than 2,500 years ago, in the shaded forests of ancient India, a prince-turned-wanderer sat beneath a Bodhi tree. He had renounced wealth, position, and even extreme asceticism in his search for lasting peace. And in that deep stillness, he came to see what many of us today still do not, that the desire for happiness, when rooted in craving, becomes the very cause of suffering. We live in a world that teaches us to run toward goals, toward success, toward self-improvement. But the more we run, the more elusive peace becomes. It always seems to retreat just beyond the next achievement, the next experience, the next version of ourselves we hope to finally approve of. The chase begins early. As children, we are praised when we achieve and corrected when we fail. We learn that love is often conditional, that rest must be earned, and that our worth is tied to how well we perform. So we internalize a map. Happiness lies out there, over the hill of effort. At the end of accomplishment, just keep going. By the time we reach adulthood, the map has become a blueprint. We plan our lives in terms of milestones, college degrees, job promotions, milestones in love, in health, in finance. There's a belief that once we have enough of anything, we'll finally feel full. But enough always shifts. The job brings status, but not joy. The vacation offers escape, but not peace. Even spiritual practice, in our performance-driven culture, becomes another box to check. Did you meditate today? Did you do it right? Did you feel something? We chase happiness in the same way we chase everything else, with effort, control, and expectation. But Buddhism does not define happiness as a result. It teaches happiness as a quality of being, a state that arises not from addition, but from subtraction, not from getting more, but from letting go. The illusion of pursuit is that it makes us believe we are separate from what we seek. It divides the self into two, the one who wants and the thing wanted. In that gap, anxiety is born. We begin to feel that we are incomplete, that life is lacking, and that we must do something to become whole. This is dukkha, not just suffering, but the subtle discontent woven into the fabric of craving itself. The Buddha taught that all suffering arises from tanha, thirst. But this thirst is not for water. It's the thirst for things to be other than they are, the thirst to feel different, look different, be different. And no matter how many times we quench it, the thirst returns. A woman may wake at dawn, exercise, journal, recite affirmations, and feel productive for a moment. But when silence returns, so does the restlessness. A man may find success in his work, recognition from his peers, but still feel a hollow ache at night. We call it burnout, anxiety, depression, but underneath those terms lies something older, more universal. The ache of disconnection from the present moment, from inner stillness, from ourselves. The world rarely encourages stopping. In fact, it penalizes it. Stillness is seen as laziness. Doing nothing is framed as wasting time. We are conditioned to believe that motion is progress, that effort equals value, but there is a profound truth hidden in the still places we fear to enter. The more we chase happiness, the more we confirm we don't have it. And yet, what if happiness is not a possession, but a presence? What if it isn't out there waiting to be caught, but here, waiting to be noticed? There is a story told in the Buddhist tradition of a man who hears about a rare, glowing jewel buried deep inside a distant mountain. He spends years preparing for the expedition, training, gathering tools, studying maps. Finally, he sets out, climbing treacherous terrain, battling storms and exhaustion. But when he reaches the cave and begins to dig, he finds nothing. Defeated, he sits down. For the first time in his journey, he becomes still. In that moment of silence, he hears water dripping nearby. He follows the sound and discovers a tiny spring, pure and clear. He cups his hands and drinks. It is the most refreshing water he's ever tasted. And then he sees it, reflected in the surface of the spring. The jewel was not in the mountain. It was within him all along. The story is not literal, but it points to a truth echoed in every contemplative tradition. What we seek with urgency often eludes us until we become quiet enough to receive it. The illusion of pursuit is seductive because it offers a sense of control. It makes us feel powerful, capable, even spiritual, so long as we're moving forward. But stillness requires humility. To stop chasing means to admit, I do not know. I cannot force joy. I cannot manufacture peace. I can only be present enough to let them find me. In Buddhist thought, mindfulness, satya, is not passive observation. It is full-hearted presence, a presence that sees without grasping, hears without judging, feels without running away. When we cultivate this awareness, we stop reacting and start seeing clearly. And in that clarity, a different kind of joy arises, not euphoric, not loud, but steady. A joy that has nothing to do with getting what we want, and everything to do with no longer needing it. Consider the forests where monks walk, barefoot in silence, not because they reject the world, but because they wish to return to it with gentler eyes. Consider the moment you felt at peace, not during a celebration, but while watching light move across a quiet room. These are not rare miracles. They are reminders that happiness is not a future event. It is a present truth, one we forget when we run, and remember when we stop. So let this be the beginning of a different kind of journey, one not marked by speed, but by stillness, one not focused on answers, but on presence. Perhaps the joy you've been seeking doesn't live on the horizon, but in the ground beneath your feet. Perhaps what you need is not another direction, but a pause. Not everything has to be earned. Not every joy must be chased. Some of the most precious things in life arrive when you become quiet enough to receive them. And happiness? It may not be something you find. It may be something that finds you when you stop. 2. The pause that changes everything. What happens when you finally stop? In the middle of a crowded world, there is a silence waiting for you. It does not call your name. It does not knock. It simply waits, patient, undemanding, and strangely unfamiliar. For most of us, it remains untouched for years, buried beneath movement, ambition, scrolling, doing, fixing. But sometimes, out of exhaustion or heartbreak, or quiet rebellion, a person stops, not because they've solved life, but because they can't keep running. And in that moment, the world shifts. This is the story of the pause. She had always been in motion. Wake before the sun, check emails, squeeze in, meditation like a task, perform, please, achieve. Rest became a prize she never felt she earned. Slowing down meant falling behind, and behind meant failure. Even her efforts to be more spiritual, more mindful, became part of the noise. But one morning, nothing in her wanted to move. No book, no quote, no breathing technique could push her into productivity. She stood by her window, still, not frozen, just still. It was not peaceful at first. There was discomfort in the quiet, a rising tide of thoughts. You're wasting time. You're doing nothing. You should be doing something. But she stayed. And that's when the shift happened. Not outside, but within. She noticed a bird on the railing, its feathers ruffled by wind, unmoved by her attention. She heard the hum of the refrigerator, the slow ticking of a distant clock. She felt her chest rise and fall. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real. For the first time in years, she wasn't chasing life. She was meeting it. What happens when we stop? The world does not end. In fact, it begins. In Buddhist practice, stopping samatha is not a break from life. It is a return to breath, to body, to the truth that has always been here, waiting behind the veil of urgency. The pause is not passive. It is alive with seeing, with listening, with allowing, and it is often only in stillness that something deeper, wiser, begins to speak. The Buddha himself paused. His awakening did not come during great effort, but after letting go of both luxury and asceticism. He sat beneath the Bodhi tree, not to acquire anything, but to truly stop, to stop pushing, to stop escaping, to simply be with all that was present. And in that moment, clarity dawned. This path, what Buddhism calls non-striving, is radical in a world that equates motion with meaning. But it is also deeply healing, because the body, the mind, and the heart each hold wisdom that cannot be accessed through force. They open through presence. When we stop, we begin to notice the subtle truths we've overlooked. We feel the tension in our shoulders that's been building for years. We hear the subtle grief beneath our busyness. We sense the child within us, still waiting to be seen. None of this is easy, but it is honest. And only in honesty can healing begin. Stillness reveals. It reveals how much we avoid through activity, how fear hides beneath our schedules, how loneliness masquerades as ambition. But stillness also reveals something else, something more essential. A natural joy that doesn't need to be manufactured. A quiet contentment that arises simply because nothing is being pushed away. In the forest monasteries of Thailand and Sri Lanka, monks rise before dawn to sit in silence. They do not sit to achieve enlightenment like ticking a box. They sit to stop, to return to the moment where suffering begins and where it ends. They learn that the world is not the enemy. It is their resistance to the world that causes pain. And in that stillness, there is room for everything. Joy, sorrow, wind in the trees, the aching of knees, the light of morning on dewdrops. Nothing is excluded. That is the miracle of the pause. It welcomes everything, and in doing so, transforms it. You don't need a monastery to begin. You don't need a cushion, a mantra, or a robe. You need only a willingness to pause, to sit on a park bench without your phone, to drink tea without distraction, to breathe and notice, not to fix, not to become, but to be. At first, the pause can feel like failure. We are addicted to movement. We measure days by what we produce. But slowly, the metrics change. You begin to value how present you were with your child's laugh, how fully you listened to the rain, how sincerely you allowed yourself to feel tired, without trying to push it away. The pause changes everything because it changes your relationship with life. Instead of reacting, you respond. Instead of performing, you notice. Instead of demanding more, you see what's already here. This shift is not dramatic, but it is profound. It is the difference between living as a seeker and living as a witness. In Buddhism, this is the transition from doing to being, from trying to control life to bowing gently before it, from escaping discomfort to making peace with it. This is not passivity. It is the deepest form of courage. To pause is to stand still while the world rushes past you and say, I will not run today. I will stay here. I will meet myself now. It is in this sacred meeting that happiness finds you not as a peak experience, but as a quiet presence. You begin to sense that the joy you longed for was never in the future. It was always here, beneath the noise, waiting for you to slow down enough to feel it. One afternoon, the woman from the beginning of our story sat again by her window. The sun poured across the floor in long golden lines. There was no music playing, no podcast, no quote of the day, only breath, only now. She smiled, not because anything had changed, but because she had. She no longer needed life to perform for her. She no longer needed herself to perform for life. And in that moment, happiness arrived. No invitation, no chase, no achievement, only a pause, only this. That is what happens when you finally stop. 3. The hidden joy of stillness. When you let go, joy finds you. There is a kind of joy that doesn't announce itself. It doesn't shout, doesn't sparkle, doesn't demand your attention with grand gestures. It arrives like dew on grass, gentle, unnoticed by most, and easily missed by the hurried eye. Yet for those who have dared to stop chasing, to sit in the still spaces of their lives, this joy becomes more than a fleeting feeling. It becomes a quiet companion. We have been taught, often from an early age, that joy must be earned, that it's a reward, an outcome, a result of something else: success, love, adventure, enlightenment. And so we set off into the world, brimming with plans, ambitions, desires. We climb, we collect, we conquer. But beneath every goal reached, there's often a whisper we can't ignore. Why does this still feel incomplete? The answer, in many ways, lies not in what we haven't yet achieved, but in what we've forgotten to notice. Stillness is not just the absence of movement, it is the presence of awareness. And when we return to that presence, we discover that joy does not need a reason to exist. It is not conditional. It does not wait on perfection. It simply blooms when the noise fades. In Buddhist teachings, there is a word for this kind of joy: pati, a rapture or delight that arises naturally in meditation, unlinked to sensory pleasure. It's not the thrill of achievement, nor the rush of falling in love. It is quieter, deeper, more sustaining. And it is available not through striving, but through surrender. There is a scene often recounted in the lives of monastics in the forests of Southeast Asia. A monk, having spent months in silent retreat, rises early one morning before the birds begin to stir. He walks barefoot along a dirt path as fog still clings to the earth. There is no destination in mind, just presence with each step. And then, as light filters through leaves, something stirs in him: a warmth, a fullness, a joy that is not about anything. It simply is. He does not try to hold it. He does not even name it. He just walks. Breath, step, smile. That moment is his teacher. What makes this joy so powerful is precisely its lack of drama. It does not demand transformation. It reveals what was always true: that beneath our grasping lies a space untouched by pain or pleasure, gain or loss. And in that space, peace is not only possible, it is inevitable. But this joy cannot be forced. It does not appear on command. It comes when you stop insisting that life be different, when you let go of the chase, not out of failure, but out of wisdom. You begin to see that many of the things you sought were never the source of happiness, but only symbols of it. A man once spent 20 years climbing the corporate ladder. He had everything the world told him would bring contentment: status, wealth, even respect. But one evening, while sitting alone in his silent apartment, he felt a sudden wave of sadness. Not because anything was wrong, but because he had realized that in chasing happiness, he had forgotten how to be happy. The next morning, he walked to the park without his phone. He sat on a bench beneath a tree and watched the wind move through the branches. He didn't analyze. He didn't plan. He just sat. The minutes passed like clouds, and then, without fanfare, a soft smile rose on his face. It wasn't joy for anything. It was joy itself. This is the joy of letting go. The joy of no longer needing life to prove anything to you. In Buddhism, this is sometimes described as sukha, Well-being not dependent on outer conditions. It arises when the mind is free from agitation, when the heart no longer fights what is, and it is perhaps the most radical form of happiness there is, because it means that joy is not something you acquire, it's something you uncover. Stillness is the doorway, and yet, many of us fear stillness. We avoid it, because it confronts us with what we've long buried. When the distractions fall away, we face our loneliness, our insecurities, our grief. But paradoxically, when we allow those feelings to be seen without resistance, they soften. They open the path to a spaciousness where joy can finally breathe. In the quiet, we begin to see that happiness is not an arrival point. It is a way of being in the world, with gentleness, with receptivity, with awe. You begin to notice the small things, the sound of your breath echoing in the chest, the rhythm of footsteps on morning pavement, the way light flickers on a glass of water. These become not background noise, but sacred experiences. You no longer need peak moments to feel alive. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. And perhaps that is the hidden miracle. Joy is not hidden in exotic places or profound revelations. It is hidden in this moment, exactly as it is, stripped of striving. All it asks is that you show up, without demands, without defense. Letting go does not mean abandoning effort. It means releasing the tight grip of expectation. It means offering yourself to life as it is, not as you wish it to be. And in doing so, something unexpected happens. You begin to feel supported, not by outcomes, but by presence itself. There is an old Zen saying, "When I stopped searching, I saw the path beneath my feet." Stillness does not provide all the answers, but it allows the right questions to emerge. Who am I when I'm not trying to be someone? What remains when everything else is dropped? And the answer, whispered through the silence, is simple. Joy remains. A joy that cannot be taken. A joy that doesn't wear a mask. A joy that does not rise and fall with fortune. It is not loud, but it is luminous. It is not temporary, but it is tender. This is the hidden joy of stillness. It is not found by running faster. It is not won through perfection. It comes, again and again. When you stop, when you let go, joy finds you not because you deserve it, but because it was never separate from you. It was only waiting for you to be still enough to feel it. 4. Returning to yourself, you were never far from peace. There is a kind of return that has nothing to do with geography. You don't board a plane. You don't climb a mountain or follow a GPS. This return is inward. It is quiet. And most of the time, it begins in the exact place you've been trying to escape. The journey back to yourself is often mistaken for a spiritual quest filled with dramatic awakenings and ecstatic bliss. But for most people, the return is subtle. It happens slowly, over time, in spaces where silence outweighs speech, in moments where effort surrenders to presence. It's not about discovering something new. It's about recognizing what never left. In Buddhist thought, this return is not framed as a destination, but as a remembering of the original mind, the Buddha nature that is not separate from joy, compassion, and clarity. The journey is not toward becoming someone different, but toward realizing you were never broken to begin with. For years, we are taught to look outward, to search for meaning in success, relationships, travel, knowledge. And while these experiences can be rich and nourishing, they often become distractions when they are substitutes for true presence, the deeper peace that so many seek. lies not in adding more to life, but in stripping away what no longer serves, like clouds slowly parting to reveal the sky. Clarity emerges not from gain, but from release. The woman who once measured her worth by her calendar, her productivity, her ability to meet every expectation, she began to let go. At first, it was accidental, a missed deadline, a canceled appointment, a morning without the alarm. But what started as failure became space, and in that space, she met herself again, not as a role or identity, but as a being. She discovered that peace was not waiting at the end of some ideal life. It had always been whispering beneath the noise of her doing. She just hadn't learned how to listen. This listening is an art in Buddhism, one cultivated through mindfulness, or sati. It is not a listening of the ears, but of the heart. To be mindful is to return to each breath as if it were the first, to greet the sensations in the body not as obstacles, but as teachers, to allow emotions to pass through like waves, not to be feared or controlled, but understood. When we stop trying to control the moment, we allow the moment to teach us. The monk walking through the forest, the mother holding her child, the artist lost in color, the elder gazing at twilight, all return to themselves in these moments of wordless intimacy. Peace does not descend from the sky. It rises from the ground you already stand on. When you finally stand still, and this stillness doesn't mean absence of activity. It means fullness of presence. You can wash dishes with stillness. You can answer emails with stillness. You can even grieve with stillness. Because stillness is not a pause in time. It is a quality of being. It is the calm beneath the current. It is the eye of the storm that remains unmoved. Many people believe that peace requires perfect conditions, silence, solitude, retreat. But the truth is, peace is not a product of circumstances. It's a posture of the heart. You can be in the middle of chaos and still touch a depth of presence that grounds you completely. That presence is not far away. It is not beyond your reach. It lives in your next inhale. It lives in the place where attention meets acceptance. The Buddha once taught that just as the ocean has a single taste, the taste of salt, the Dharma has a single taste, the taste of liberation. Liberation is not some distant freedom beyond this life. It is the freedom to meet this moment without resistance. And in that freedom, peace is not something you chase. It becomes who you are. Returning to yourself means embracing both your wholeness and your wounds. It means not waiting for the perfect version of yourself to arrive before you feel worthy of peace. It means knowing that your breath, your heartbeat, your presence, all of it is already enough. One man, long burdened by the belief that he needed to achieve enlightenment before he could rest, eventually stopped trying. He had read every book, attended countless retreats, and followed every technique. Yet peace still felt distant. One afternoon, he sat on his porch and simply watched the wind move through a field. No practice, no agenda, just presence. And something shifted. He realized that he had been so busy becoming spiritual, he had forgotten how to be human. And in embracing his humanity, his flaws, his uncertainties, his aching tenderness, he returned to himself. This is the paradox at the heart of the Buddhist path. The more we let go of striving, the closer we come to what we've longed for. Peace is not a trophy. It's a homecoming. And that home has been patiently waiting. In the Zen tradition, there is a saying, sitting quietly, doing nothing, spring comes, and the grass grows by itself. You don't have to force awakening. You don't have to perform worthiness. You don't have to be extraordinary. You simply have to stop abandoning yourself in pursuit of something you think you lack. Returning to yourself is a practice. Some days, it will feel natural. Other days, you'll forget. You'll get swept into the currents of anxiety, comparison, busyness. That's okay. Each moment is another chance to begin again, to come back, to remember. And as you remember, you may find that the peace you were seeking wasn't hidden. It was simply waiting for your permission to appear. You may realize that you were never as far from home as you thought. And when the breath slows, when the hands unclench, when the heart stops running, you will hear it. That deep silence within, that gentle knowing. You are already here. Welcome back. If this story stirred something quiet inside you, let it linger. Let it echo. Let it lead you back, not to a goal, but to a place you never truly left. This is Trandy wisdom. And this is the kind of truth worth coming back to.